Dr. Bahanu Abegaz, Executive Director, the African Academy of Science, Dr. Thomas Kariuki, Director of AISA, Dr. George Mbako, Representative of the Ministry of Education, Science, Technology, Kenya, Mr. Simon Kay, Representative of the Wellcome Trust, Mrs. Julia Camp, Representative of the UK DFID, Mr. Hadis Tadese from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Dr. Ambali, Representative of NEPAD, Mr. Abdullah Jimbe, Representative of Deltas, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Habari za asubuhi. Thank you for coming. It's good to be in Nairobi. Let me first thank you all for making this Nairobi trip possible. I would like to begin by conveying my heartfelt thanks and appreciation to our host, the African Academy of Science, the Alliance for Accelerating Excellence in Science in Africa, the Wellcome Trust, the UK Department for International Development, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for all the support to the cause of improving science in Africa. A special words of thanks to His Excellency Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, and the Government of Kenya for their generous hospitality. I would like to pay tribute and acknowledge with thanks the President Kenyatta's enthusiastic support for boosting scientific excellence in Africa. Friends, the crucial importance of science and technology, and more importantly, the need for the continent to commit itself to the boosting of excellence in science and technology for achieving sustained development cannot be overemphasized. Throughout history, science and technology have been instrumental in improving the human condition. That role will not diminish, although nations will have to adapt and innovate to bend science and technology for development purposes and social advance. When we talk about leveraging science and technology for development, we cannot be oblivious of the need to mobilize adequate funding for science technology research. Let me quote Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, a great African leader, statesman, and Pan-Africanist, who said in 1963, and I quote, "We shall accumulate machinery and establish steel works, iron foundries, and factories. We shall link the various states of our continent with communication. We shall astound the world with our hydroelectric power. We shall drain marshes and swamps, clear infested areas, feed the undernourished, and rid our people of parasite and disease. It is within the possibility of science and technology to make even the Sahara bloom into a vast field with verdant vegetation for agricultural and industrial development," unquote. That visionary statement made by the founding father of Ghana has been best captured in the Lagos Consolidated Plan of Action 1980, which serves as a guidepost for charting Africa's development. Looking back, Africa, and I mean sub-Saharan Africa, has taken significant strides in establishing networks of excellence, launching African Union competitive grants, supporting capacity development, improving the policy environment conducive to S&T, and last but not least, building innovation mechanism to spur innovation and change. Nonetheless, the result can best be described as work in progress. Some of the major challenges faced are excessive reliance on external financial support that has tended to target short-term activities and solutions. In other areas, there has been limited scope for engaging African scientists and rallying them to promote sustainable development. And finally, the CPA had insufficient linkages to other continental framework and science and technology strategies. Our task today is to look forward and address the large gap in research capacity that still exists between Africa and the rest of the world in all scientific disciplines, especially in the physical sciences, technology, engineering, and mathematics, what we refer to as the STEM sector. In Africa itself, research is mostly dominated by 5 nations, Egypt, Algeria, Nigeria, Kenya, and South Africa, it is no surprise that 4 of these countries are also leading in GDP terms: Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, and Algeria. A World Bank report examined the research enterprise in Africa over a decade, from 2003 to 2012, and compared it with Malaysia and Vietnam. These 2 countries had a comparable research base to sub-Saharan Africa region at the beginning of the period of analysis. It is interesting to observe that over the period 2003 to 2012, all 3 sub-Saharan regions had doubled their yearly research output and had greatly increased both the quantity and the quality of research. Indeed, sub-Saharan Africa's share of global research had increased from 0.44% to 0.72% during the decade examined. Nonetheless, a yawning gap in research capacity still exists between sub-Saharan Africa and the rest of the world. The region only accounts for less than 1% of the world's research output, while being home to 12% of the global population. It is time to tackle mediocrity in science and technology and forge the next generation of partnership that can deliver results and lasting outcomes. Improving higher education is key to making Africa a knowledge-driven continent. Despite the region's strong growth, countries with comparable levels of research output in 2003 grew even faster over the same period, that is, Malaysia at 35% and Vietnam at 18%. Upon closer analysis, it was observed that sub-Saharan Africa's output growth had overwhelmingly been driven by advances in the health science research, approximately 4% annual growth rate, which now accounts for 45% of all sub-Saharan African research. Clearly, for sub-Saharan African countries, renewed attention to science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM, must become a strategic priority. Research in the physical sciences and STEM make up only 29% of all research in sub-Saharan Africa. In contrast, STEM constitute the largest share of Malaysia and Vietnam's total output, an average of 68%. Currently, sub-Saharan Africa, especially East Africa and Southern Africa, rely heavily on international collaboration and visiting faculty for its research output. This must change. There is also very little regional collaboration among African countries, hence the need to increase Africa-Africa as well as South-South collaboration. This is a scenario that needs to be reversed, as it calls for more government engagement and increased public funding of science technology research. If Africa is to grasp the science and technology revolution, then government must take the lead in both policy formulation and implementation to mobilize science and technology for sustainable development. We are unfortunately very far from the targets set by the Lagos Plan of Action and the African Union 2007 initiative calling on African countries to allocate 1% of their GDP to science, and I'm pleased to see that Kenya is taking the lead. As of today, only Tunisia and South Africa are on track for meeting the target. With the combined GDP of Africa coming close to US $3.7 trillion, the amount that could potentially be allocated to science is US $200 billion. African countries can no longer depend only on external finances to fund basic and strategic research on the continent. Greater public support is needed so that the fruits of research, science and technology collaboration can help advance sustainable development on the African continent. African governments, as well as the private sector, must make the firm commitment to invest in science, technology, and innovation, particularly if the continent wants to participate actively in the global knowledge economy and cultivate local science technology capacity, including the full participation of women. As you can appreciate, the latter aspect of this agenda is very close to my heart. Our collective challenge is to reduce brain drain, promote brain circulation, and accelerate brain gain, because about 1/3 of qualified scientists and engineers who were born and trained in developing countries have now moved to industrialized countries. 10% of the total S&T workforce in the United States is of foreign origin, while in Australia the figure is as high as 25%. I remain convinced that the high-level research network, adequate infrastructure, facilities, and a better integration of basic science and technology within the public and private sectors in Africa would contribute to attracting Africans back home to their countries. Because science is a global enterprise and thrives on collaboration. Such a movement would also help to attract African scientists from around the world to work on the continent and address its challenges. I'm pleased to report that in Mauritius, the private sector has taken the lead by creating a biopark and is pushing for the creation of other technoparks with a view to promoting the strategic emerging sectors such as ICT, biotechnology, plant-based pharmaceuticals, and other allied industries for greater job creation. Institutions that have led to the genesis of the biopark and the cyber city have existed for the past 10 years and have capitalized on our strength, which remain our people and our biodiversity. The government has also pledged around $50 million to provide just seed funds to support the setting up of infrastructure in the public sector while promoting public-private partnership to play to our strengths. A tax holiday of 10 years has also been provided in the 2015 budget to attract talented Mauritian diaspora. At the continental level, I would like to commend the initiative by DFID, the Wellcome Trust, the UK Department for International Development, and the Bill and the Melinda Gates Foundation for pioneering innovative approaches, and to that empowering the African scientific research community, and not forgetting, of course, the contribution of NEPAD. These efforts will be further amplified because they chose to work with the African Academy of Sciences, which is bringing together the best brain of the continent, including the diaspora, for a collective push to vastly boost science and technology capacity. This exemplary partnership, no doubt, bodes well for the future. I have covered a large canvas and would like to close by making an appeal for greater science and technology education and collaboration and investment. Such intervention and investment will not only help to build African capacity, but also have the beneficial spillover effect of bringing to bear the benefit of modern science to more frontally tackle Africa's development challenges. Our time is to act is now. And I thank you for your attention.